This has been an awful procedure. The gentleman from Kentucky is right. We have debated the whole government, fundamental issues that go far beyond budgetary issues, in 3.5 days. We will have debated fundamental issues in 10 minutes. This is openness. This is a travesty of the democratic process. I will object strenuously at every procedural opportunity to any effort to repeat this travesty. Having made it clear, once the Senate gives this awful product an appropriate burial, I will not be a party to its resuscitation.
Having spent the last 4 years dealing with the most closed Congress, the last Congress, in fact, with more closed rules than any Congress in American history, and then to be lectured about what is a travesty is a travesty. That's the real travesty. That many closed rules, and you come down here and want to tell us what is awful? Try standing here for the last 4 years and dealing with closed rule, closed rule, closed rule, no amendments. We're not going to let you represent your people because we're going to cram everything down. That's a travesty. I will not yield. I'll listen to you. Let's get on to the democratic process because that's what it is.
Louie Gohmert.
So much. Oh, you're a boost of fresh air. Let me tell you, this is just great. Thank you. I tell you though, I think God has a way of preparing us for things that are coming in our future that we don't even see. You know, I was in the United States Army for 4 years. I was a prosecutor. I was in private practice for a number of years, and my late mother's words began to haunt me that you know you were meant to be a public servant. And then we had a district judge in my hometown that nobody would run against. He'd never lost in 30 years, but we needed a new judge. My wife and I wrestled with it, prayed about it. I ended up running, and we won. And then over a 10-year period of being a district judge and then Chief Justice of a Court of Appeals, I began to realize, you know, we've got a lot of messed up federal legislation that needs to be replaced. I was required to follow laws I didn't like, but I knew I couldn't legislate from the bench. So I left the bench at the end of the term, ran for Congress so I could constitutionally legislate. I was supposed to be that. Let me tell you, when I first got elected judge, one of the things I promised, we had 1,000 defendants out on bond who were awaiting trial. One guy had been waiting 20 years, and I promised to move that backlog. And to do that, I had to settle the case for trial as quickly as possible. And so I had these massive cattle call type hearings, and each one I'd call the case name, the defendant's attorney had come up, I'd say, are you the defendant so-and-so? And he would answer yes on the record. And I would say, your trial date, time, place is right here, such and such day and time. You got that? You'd have to answer yes on the record. Court reporter take it down, and we'd send them on. And see, that way, if they didn't show up for trial, I could revoke their bond. And usually they were ready for trial a lot quicker if they were in jail if they hadn't come in. So anyway, I'm running through this, and I call one case, the defendant's attorney come up, and I say, are you the defendant so-and-so? And before he can answer, his lawyer says, Your Honor, my client's deaf, and we're going to need an interpreter for trial. And I said, that's fine, we'll have one for trial. We'll have one for any other hearing proceedings after this. Today, I just need to make sure he understands when his trial date time is. So I looked him in the eye, and I said, can you read my lips? And he looked me in the eye and went, but I was being prepared for Congress. People will look you in the face and just lie to you. So it was preparation. And listen, I don't Google my name. My wife, Kathy, is here, and she had showed me one of her Google alerts, and I wish she would. But anyway, I was called a crackpot and one of the dumbest people in in the country, and I originally on Facebook typed a response saying, oh yeah, let's compare SAT and GRE, and my wife said, that's pride. All right, select, delete. But anyway, it gets so frustrating. At least the guy that called me the dumbest spelled it right. Sometimes they don't. But anyway, but I wrote an article last fall called Christianity and Government, and it's been misinterpreted. But I would encourage you to go online and read it. You can go on Facebook to Gohmert and or gohmert.house.gov, our website. But what I was pointing out is that in Romans 13, it talks about, God, the government is God's minister to punish evil. And I explained that our founders, if you read their original writings, their letters, their diaries, they point out that we have within our grasp the chance to govern ourselves like no one's ever done. We, the people, we're going to be the government the way they designed it. And we're supposed to be. But for too long, people have just said, I'm not going to participate. But they anticipated that when we, the people, are the government, we'll have a hiring day every so often, and we'll hire servants to go serve what we tell them to do. And you're supposed to do research on those applying to be your servant. And you're supposed to look into their background and look into what they've said. And if you have a guy who has never had a real job before and he's on record saying the same thing on both sides of an issue, then you ought not to hire him to be your servant. But we haven't learned that lesson like we need to. And people don't show up for hiring day like they should. And so I know I've heard people here bashing Congress and the president and the judiciary, but let me tell you, the old adage is true. Democracy ensures people will be governed no better than they deserve. Folks, when I was in the Army, one of the hardest things to come to grips with was that we as a nation deserved Jimmy Carter. And you may not like it, but in 1992, we as a nation deserved Bill Clinton, and in 2008, we as a nation deserved Barack Obama. It is time that the Tea Party step in, as you've been doing over the last year. You step in the gap and you make sure we hire good people, because we're counting on you to help us as a nation deserve better. It's in our hands. And to me, the Tea Party groups are an answer to prayer. Well, let me mention, I was asked to talk something about judicial reform. You know, some states elect their judges like we do in Texas. Some have a political process of appointment and then have retention elections. Some call it merit selection, which is really a political selection, and then retention elections. And generally, people don't get bumped out on retention elections. And in fact, since 1962, when the state of Iowa instituted that process, no Supreme Court judge had ever failed to get retained until November. But in the last year or so, the Iowa Supreme Court had said that, you know what, we don't find any constitutional basis for saying that marriage is between a man and a woman. They even went so far in the opinion to say we don't even find any biological evidence to support marriage between a man and a woman. You know, in other words, we don't think it makes sense that nature or nature's God would have intended for a sperm and an egg to meet, but maybe a sperm and some other substance should meet together. I mean, that's how poor this decision was. And something I learned as an appellate judge, sometimes if you've got a really controversial subject, you'll hear somebody say, look, I know you don't really agree with this opinion, but you remember the such and such opinion where you were pushing that one and you wanted anonymity, so we all did that opinion unanimously, so it would give you cover. I need cover on this one. This one needs to be unanimous. And so the Supreme Court of Iowa did what was called en banc. Now, when I was a judge, I'd email other appellate judges and say, I don't know who en banc is, but that idiot is making your court look bad. He just came out with a terrible decision. But anyway, it's a way that often judges get covered on the appellate bench because there's anonymity and unanimity. Well, guess what? I got a call from my dear friend Steve King in Iowa, and he says, hey, we need help. You left the bench to do it the right way. Come help us in Iowa. We want to take out our 3 judges that are up this time. And Tony Perkins from Family Research Council called, said, we got a bus tour going through Iowa. So I joined Steve and Tony, and in November, yes, it was 3, and yes, it was anonymous by being unanimous, but those 3 paid the price. They all got booted. You can do that. Hold them accountable. So let me give you just 5 quick suggestions. Tea parties statewide need to establish a committee, and it probably should be lawyers. I know, first we kill all the lawyers, all that. But as I told my dad when he was trying to convince me not to go to law school, Dad, I really wrestle with this, and it's like a tool. The tool is, there's nothing wrong with the tool. It's all in whose hands it is. You know, it can be used constructively or destructively. Our founders used it constructively. And you need to get rid of people that are destructive to that. And so anyway, get to a statewide committee, probably attorneys, to examine your statewide judges so they can give you a full synopsis of their background, what they've said, what they've done, so you know whether to mobilize and get these judges out or get some judge in. You'll find that out. Another point that's important. Now people say, well, we can't do much about the federal judges. Yes, you can. And I can tell you personally, because having been in Washington, I've been on the inside of some of the things that have gone on. And you elect the president's going to make the appointments, and you can make sure, and the president's not insensitive when a country gets upset over a nomination. He pulls it back. We've seen that. You can make that happen by making your voices heard. And in the Senate, they have to be confirmed. It's not like a czar, something somebody made up. They got to go through confirmation if they're going to be a judge in a federal system. And you can let those senators hear. I know the senator from California that told a dear friend of mine that was up for appointment to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that she would back her. There was no real reason not to support her because she was so brilliant and had such a great career. And then she heard from constituents from the left, and she went after her and voted against her. So constituents make a difference on the left. There's no reason that conservatives, who are, I consider you mainstream conservatives, can be heard from and not have an effect. You can. Elect good senators and president. Number 3, hold state and local judges accountable for legislating. I had to follow the law. Times I didn't like it, but that's your job when you're a judge, not to rewrite. Hold them accountable, boot them out when they don't do that. Number 4, it's an imperative that you come to the defense of judges who are doing the right thing because the left's coming after them. Justice Scalia, Justice Thomas right now have people coming after them. These same people never raised one iota of noise about a justice on the Supreme Court who was a leader of the National ACLU deciding ACLU cases. They never made noise about a new Justice Kagan from the Solicitor General office deciding cases that went through their office and said anything about it. Well, you can be heard and you can come to the defense. You can write emails, you can write letters, you can get on talk radio, send letters to the editor, but judges, I can tell you personally, we need your help. Otherwise, all people hear from is the left, and it makes them think the country's gone the wrong way. You can make that kind of difference. Now, also, encourage your representative and senators to realign the courts of appeal. My con law professor used to say, there's only one court in the entire Constitution that's mentioned. All the rest are creations of Congress subject to whatever they tell them. The jurisdiction, the area, the subjects, we have control over that, but we need more representatives and senators ready to realign things. The Ninth Circuit had a justice saying, we're going to keep coming out with as many of these opinions as we can, because even though we know the Supreme Court thinks they're unconstitutional, they can't reverse them all. Well, I'd like to realign their jurisdiction to be confined to disputes that arise in their building. But I need some support and help for that kind of thing. Well, those are just some things I would really encourage you to do, but please understand, you want to go back. We've talked about the Constitution. I've read it so many times. Thank God you've read it. Others are starting. It's a good thing. But you go back to the first 5 weeks of the Constitutional Convention in 1787. They were going nowhere. They were furious with each other, people leaving mad and just so contentious. And 80-year-old Benjamin Franklin, suffering from gout, had to be carried in and out, smart as ever. We were told that he was a deist, that he believed some deity created the world, the universe, but never intercedes. He was recognized. And I know earlier a couple of lines from this speech were mentioned, but you need to understand, and this is the last point I'll leave with you, but after he finished his speech, Jonathan Dayton, delegate from New Jersey, said this: the doctor sat down, and never did I behold a countenance at once so dignified and delighted as was that of Washington at the close of the address, nor were the members of the convention generally less affected. The words of the venerable Franklin fell upon our ears with a weight and authority even greater, we may suppose, an oracle to have had in a Roman Senate. And it didn't stop there. James Madison made the motion, Sheridan seconded, and then Randolph got up and said, I move that on July 4th we have a preacher preach to us and we all go. And that was voted on, and they did that. And on July 4th, they attended the Reformed Calvinistic Church and heard a sermon by William Rogers, and Dayton records, quote, we assembled again after that, and every unfriendly feeling had been expelled and a spirit of conciliation had been cultivated because of this speech. I'll finish with just a few lines. But when Franklin stood up, he said, we've been going 5 weeks, we got more no's than I's on most every line. And then his own words, in this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark, how has it happened, sir, that we have not once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. And have we now forgotten this powerful friend? Or we think we no longer have need? I have lived so a long time. And the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth. God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it possible an empire could rise without his aid? We've been assured, sir, in the sacred writing that unless the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Firmly believe this. I also firmly believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in our little political building no better than the builders of Babel. We'll be divided by our local partial interests, and we ourselves shall become a byword down through the ages. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Tea Party, God has showed us how you can have a nation be the greatest in world history. And now he's put it in our hands. We keep it for 200 more, or we lose it, and I know why you're here. God bless you for that. God bless America.